Welcome to Level With Us, and it is our yearly tradition, one of my favorite traditions, to go over our top 5 games of the year. And 2024 was kind of a weird year for both of us, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Explain yourself.
Well, yeah, so I just had a baby, and that severely limits my free time. And yet, I think I've played more video games this year than any other year of my life.
See, I feel like having a baby would limit your time, but also you would have more time that you need to be just sitting on a couch doing not much. And I feel like video games would sometimes fit into that.
I think you're onto something there. I think I was just clinging to my free time as much as possible and hurriedly trying to squeeze in as much me time before I had to go to sleep every night, maybe to an unhealthy degree. And for you, it's a little bit weird of a year as well, because this is the first time we're talking about games of the year, and you released a game this year.
I also had a baby, but my baby was a game baby. I released
they're
my
going to talk about your cat again.
No, my cat has very little impact on whether or not I play video games, but I did work on a video game that released in November. Jared, give it to me straight. Is that on your top 5? Is it your number 1?
I must admit it's not on there, but I mostly didn't. It was mostly out of me wanting to be, unbiased.
Sure.
I've recommended the game to everyone. I'd feel a little disingenuous.
You'd feel like
did
a
immensely enjoy. Yeah, no, I'll still tell people I loved it, and I will absolutely. It was on my honorable mentions list for sure.
I'll take that.
But hey, if you want to put it on your top 5, I won't judge you at all.
Jared, it's my number 5 through 1. I have the name of my game written 5 times.
See, it would have been funnier if I'm like, what's your number 5? Oh, that's a great choice. And then I say my 4, and then, hey, what's your number 4? Yeah, so Rise of the Golden Idol, again, actually, is my number 4. And then you just keep the bit going.
Yeah, that would be a little too navel-gazing, especially since there were a lot of really awesome game experiences that I had this year. I definitely had to look back through my notes. It was hard for me to remember when this year began, video game-wise.
Yeah, right.
I was afraid. I'm actually still a little afraid that maybe something on my top 5 will be something that I actually played last year. But I'm pretty sure I got my top 5 for the year.
Well, no worries. And as always, our rule for this is, there's not really any hard rules other than, it's hopefully a game you experienced this year. It didn't have to necessarily come out this year. That's kind of what we've done. And this is like the 4th time we've done it, I think. Maybe 3rd. I think it's 4th, which is just bonkers.
Yeah.
But this is really fun. I'm excited to go over it with you. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that I don't remember if I mentioned it last year, but I had a New Year's gaming resolution to get through my backlog.
Mm-hmm.
At the start of this year, my backlog was around 100 games. Like, I had narrowed it down to 100 games, and I ended the year at roughly about 80 or 85. So I didn't get, it's not nothing, but I didn't get as far as I wanted. It's a little debilitating to see how little progress I've made than I expected. Do you have any suggestions on how to be okay with that? Or
I definitely don't have advice. It's not like I'm better at doing that than you. I would just make sure that you're actually having fun with the games and not doing it out of some sort of desire to complete a list, and do it because they're legitimately games that you want to play.
I think that's sage advice.
I'm thinking that like playing 20 games that you've wanted to play in a year is an accomplishment. I wouldn't be like, here's the thing, you could complete your backlog and add 20 games to that backlog in that same period of time. So like, I don't think you're ever going to run out of games worth playing.
I'll have to remember that going forward, especially if I can learn to treat my leisure time as leisure time and not as trying to get through it as much as possible, because then it becomes a chore. But, well, enough of that. Let's get into our top 5. And how about you start with your number 5?
Sure. My number 5 game for the year is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Which I am delighted that Nintendo is still making these like toy box Zelda games, these top-down kind of handheld feeling Zelda games. There are a lot of things that I think Echoes of Wisdom did really well. Mostly the mechanic of echoes, where you can take pretty much any enemy and summon it, and a lot of different objects and summon them. So it makes a Zelda game, which is usually kind of combat and puzzle focused, more on the puzzly side, and also more about, like, instead of in combat just jumping in yourself, there's a little bit more strategy of thinking of which enemies are going to be the best tools against other enemies, like almost like type matchups like Pokemon. Also, it gets bonus points for being the first real Zelda game where you get to play as Zelda. So I am pleased with the game, and it made my top 5.
That's a great pick. I don't know. I'm curious how well this game will age over time. I could see it standing up really well because of its open design. I could also see it being not, remembered as fondly due to its open design as well. So I'm curious how it will stand. But for what it is, I quite enjoyed it as well, especially what you said, the creature collecting aspect was kind of my favorite thing in that experience. And I've always wanted to play a Zelda in a video game, so that definitely ticked that box for me. Excellent. So my number 5 is a game called Another Crab's Treasure. And it's kind of a recurring theme for me that a game leaves a really good impression with me if I enjoy it and it's in a genre I can't stand. Because that's kind of how it was for Hades with me. I don't like roguelikes, but I loved Hades. I don't love RPGs, but I adored Sea of Stars. And Another Crab's Treasure is that for me with Souls-likes, and it does it very simply by basically also making it a 3D platformer. It's got this great, fun, under-the-sea theme. You play as a little hermit crab. The armor system is interesting. You're constantly swapping out your shell. Each one has a different magical ability. It's difficult like Souls-likes, but it has like accessibility options, which is like a big no-no for Souls-likes for some reason. Like, people are like, no, you can't change the difficulty. This one, they're like, no, it's fine. If you really need it, here are some options. And that's something I really appreciated. Yeah, just a fun game. It definitely ticks the boxes of a Souls-like in having a really depressing story, but I just loved running around in the sand and fighting crabs and finding new shells. That was so fun. And again, because it's in a genre I normally do not like, that it gets extra points for me.
I'm surprised that I'm learning from you that the story has depressing beats to it, because it looks like a very silly game. It looks funny.
It is very silly. It has a lot of silly dialogue, but the theme of most Souls-likes is like you are in a dying world kind of thing. Like, Elden Ring, like everything, it's the lands between, everything is dying, everything is, there's a lot of hopelessness. And in this game, it treats pollution that way. Like it basically ends with like, and there's nothing we can do. And there's just more and more pollution, and there's like little sparks of hope, but it's just a little sad. I'm like, dang it, this is your chance to break away from the genre and have a nice, happy ending. Because, the humor is, people compare it to SpongeBob, and it's, that's not far off the mark. They have some very funny swear words in the game that they use, and the characters have funny voices, but like, it really kind of ends with like, oh man, kind of thing. That's my only mark against it, I think. I otherwise quite enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah, I will consider giving that game a try.
Yeah, anytime. Come on over. I'd love to see you try it out.
Okay, my number 4?
Yes.
My number 4 game is Cassette Beasts for the year.
Ah.
So Cassette Beasts is an indie game that is clearly thematically connected to Pokemon, where you are battling monsters, collecting monsters, and fighting with those monsters. Kind of the main mechanic, the main kind of draw of the game is you can fuse different creatures together into bigger creatures, kind of like those online, there's like web browser games where you can like combine two Pokemon and see what it looks like. It's like that, except they intentionally, have these procedurally generated sort of mashups between two different, like any two creatures. And I played through the game with my wife, and it was fun we basically wanted a 2-player Pokemon game, and it delivered on that. And also we had a lot of fun combining different creatures and being horrified or disgusted sometimes, being like, oh, that's ugly. But then other times we're like, oh, no, that's pretty cool.
Is there a bespoke design, or do they like take an element and just kind of literally smash it together when you fuse?
More the second one than the first. It's not bespoke. It's like it takes the body type of one and like the colors of the other, or certain bigger elements about it. So sometimes you'll get like peculiarities in it, but in general, it's a fun mechanic. We had fun playing through it together.
That's really cool. I love the idea of playing through an entire Pokemon game in co-op. Did you do the whole thing in co-op, or did you sometimes do single player?
Yeah, as far as I remember, we did the whole thing in co-op.
That's so cool. Because RPGs aren't usually built that way. Sea of Stars just put out an update for up to 3-player couch co-op, and
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I want to replay that game, so I'm going to do it with Mariah, and I think that'll be a lot of fun to see her experience that with me.
Nice.
Well, that's a great pick. My number 4 is called Mini Shoot Adventures. I think I told you about this one.
Uh-huh.
It's really interesting. It's only on Steam right now. Hopefully it'll be on consoles eventually, because I think people will really, really like this game when they actually find out about it. But it's a bullet hell game. You play as a little spaceship, and you're, fighting monsters on a planet. And like I said, you're dodging hundreds of bullets at a time. There's lots of boss battles. But the thing that made me really like it is that it took the Zelda formula and had that be the backdrop. So you have an overworld, you have dungeons, and you have, items that you get to, kind of Metroidvania style items that help you unlock further parts of the world. And it's just really fun to explore. And even though there's lots of, times where it'll close you into an arena and play it like a typical bullet hell shooter, it was the progression, getting literally pieces of heart that made me really excited to keep playing it and just like keep upgrading my little spaceship. And I think it's also kind of cute. All the other characters you meet are also spaceships, and they just kind of communicate to each other with beeps and boops, and you're just this little baby one trying to save the world. I don't know. I found it immensely charming, and also helped me remember that, Zelda games have an influence on other genres too, not just action adventure. Like, you can take a Zelda-style adventure, mash it with something else to great effect. Nice.
Yeah, I have not dug into this game. This is another I should probably put on my backlog to get
You're
to.
welcome.
Thank you.
My goal this next year is not to clear my backlog, it's to make yours longer.
Yay! Well, you're doing it. Some games take me a while to get to. Like, I just recently played, it's not on my top 5 list, but I just recently played Let's Revolution.
Oh, really? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember that was one of my top 5 last year, I think.
Yeah. If not last year, then the year before. It's like
possibly 2 years. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that's like a Minesweeper roguelike. And I don't know, I've played a lot of roguelikes recently, so I had a lot of fun with it.
I had a feeling you'd enjoy it. It seemed, not just because it was a roguelike, but like I just really liked how puzzly and board gamey it felt, So yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it too. I really remember that one quite fondly.
Well, my number 3 is a puzzle game called Lock Digital. So this game really just came out a month ago, but I had played early access of this.
Oh.
Or I guess a demo, an internal demo. Anyway, Lock Digital is based on a puzzle book of the same name, Lock, L-O-K. and it is essentially a puzzle where you are doing these like word searches for fictional words. So like you find LOK in like a word search, and then you fill all those cells in black, and the goal is to fill in the entire puzzle. But the fun of it is that as you fill in different words, the different words do different things, and it doesn't tell you. You have to learn. So it's a really good, tight example of something called like instructionless puzzles, where you're given really limited understanding of what exactly the puzzle is when you start. But then through playing it, you have multiple aha moments. In fact, I had an experience where I discovered a word earlier than I was supposed to. Like, I used a word that I didn't know was a word to solve a puzzle before it like said, all right, now you're gonna find a new word. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it really captures the excitement of figuring things out, like feeling clever, being stumped, and then getting over those stumpages.
I've noticed how much people really seem to enjoy games with where player knowledge is a big element.
Right.
You know, Outer Wilds is huge. Tunic, obviously, very good. Animal Well was also huge this year, and people really love the idea of just you learn it as you go. So I'm intrigued. I think I want to try it once it comes to iOS. I think I'll get the app version and try it out myself. But
nice. Also, a shout out for the soundtrack. It's like got a really chill, nice soundtrack. It helps the medicine go down easier when you're staring at a puzzle for 15 minutes and feeling like you're making no progress, that the music is so chill and nice.
Awesome. All right, well, my number 3 is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. It's just a solid Metroidvania. That's all I really have to say. It's similar to something like Metroid Dread, but with more melee combat. Your character kind of feels like, you know, controlling a character in Smash Bros. Because you have like up air attacks, you have combo moves, you have special abilities you unlock. I just really dug it, and there's nothing about it that is truly innovative. I mean, I will say, it sounds like I'm talking the game down. I'm just saying, for what it is, considering it didn't do anything crazy thing, it still makes my top 3 from just being a really solid, really fun experience. And I like that, you know, I said no innovation, but you know what? They did add a mechanic I thought was really cool, which is basically populating your map with screenshots that you take to remember landmarks and stuff. I think that's perfect for the genre. I think other people should borrow from that idea. But yeah, Prince of Persia, really fun. It's Ubisoft, so it's, you know, $15 or less these days. Highly recommended. It's just a easy pickup, easy recommendation from me.
Yeah, I honestly forgot I played that one this year, so I'd probably give that a 2.5 on my list. I thoroughly enjoyed that game.
I'm glad you liked it too. That's great.
Yeah, I feel like it has a lot of polish to it. It's like, especially since a lot of Metroidvanias, not that they're dated, but a lot of them kind of have this element of difficulty. It's good if it's confusing or difficult.
Right.
I feel like Prince of Persia makes it just a little bit more streamlined, and it's a little more tricky to get stuck because of how it has mechanics to help you along the way.
I think I agree with that. It's because it's modern in its design. It's an easier, I don't want to say it's easier because there is difficulty options, but like it's a more digestible experience than, yeah, some of the like original Metroid games. And, you know, there's a lot of amazing indie Metroidvanias these days, but there's not a lot of AAA ones. So
right.
It's nice to have one that has, you know, a little bit more of a budget. It feels good. Yeah.
Well, speaking of a game that did not have a AAA budget, my number 2 is Backlog. Which anyone who is watching the Game Awards or really any award show, I'm sure, has heard of Backlog. I originally was interested in trying out the game because I saw that it was being published by the same publisher as the game that I worked on.
That's right.
So it was kind of interesting to play the game before everyone realized what a hit it was.
You played it before it was cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm a hipster. But yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, Balatro is where poker meets solitaire. You're playing poker hands, but then it's also a deck builder. And it's not just like you're adding new cards into your deck of 52. You're also adding jokers, which are kind of like artifacts in a roguelike that kind of change your goals, because you're trying to win chips in each of these levels, and the jokers will give you different incentives or different directions to go with your deck, different hands that you're trying to play. It doesn't have any like story to it or characters. It's just got vibes, and the vibes are very strong. It's like on a CRT television. It's got this really ethereal music that almost never gets old.
Yeah, it gets so stuck in my head.
Yeah, it's kind of a masterclass in rogue-like deck builders, like distilled down to just a score chaser, you know, in a good way. It's like distilled down, it's like we've cut out any story, and the only thing we have here is just the mechanics, which are so fun and well put together.
One thing I really admire about the design for that game is that the creator, Local Thunk, deliberately chose not to play other roguelikes while developing this game. He was like, I'm gonna just be in my own creative space and not try and copy anything else I've seen. And obviously it's impossible to completely separate yourself from things that influence you, but I think it paid off because he was trying to make a game that he would enjoy playing himself, and then, you know, got really lucky in that it just took off everywhere, and for good reason. It's a very well designed. Balatro was actually kind of my 5.5. Like, it was competing with Another Crab's Treasure for my top 5, and it really hurt me that I couldn't put it in my top 5. I think Another Crab just barely edged it, just by, like I said, being in a genre I don't usually like. But yeah, Balatro, you know, fantastic, phenomenal, very addicting game, and I have it on my phone now, and I've deliberately chosen to only play it when I'm traveling, so that'll be my de facto travel game, because otherwise it just sucks time away. It's kind of insane.
Yeah.
Fantastic pick. My number 2, and then I'd like to do some honorable mentions if that's okay, but
sure.
My number 2 for Game of the Year 2024 is UFO 50. And I think we can both agree that this was an ambitious game that really paid off. You know, it had around 8 indie developers that have worked on it, or maybe less, but they've been working on it for almost a decade. And it's 50 NES era style games. We've already talked about it on the podcast. And, you know, it has some real standout ones that could have made this list on their own had they been released alone, and I just put a lot of time in them. I think about like Party House, I think about Hyper Contender, which I just in multiplayer is just one of my favorite things. But, you know, as a package, even with a bunch I didn't like, it gets my number 2 just because of the experience of not knowing the next icon you click on, like what game it's gonna be. Just the feeling of discovery and being like, wow, I still have 25 games to get through. Right? Oh, half of them have multiplayer. You know, there's a whole bunch of secrets hidden in a bunch of these, which I have not even touched. There's achievements, and there's a lot of genre mashups, and just really fun, really challenging, really difficult, but still really fun to just peruse, you know? I think that the experience of playing UFO 50 is why it gets my number 2. And also just like not knowing anything about these games, not knowing the mechanics until you actually play them. Kind of what you were saying with your puzzle game, just learning them by playing them. Pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I will kind of jump ahead and just say that this is my number 1 game for the year, UFO 50.
Now, why is it your number 1?
For a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. In a game industry that is very much in the realm of like microtransactions, free to play, loot boxes, battle passes, all of these things, it's so fun to play a game that has so much substance to it that also kind of respects both your time and your attention span. It's like, look, like if you don't want to figure this out, try something else. Like none of them are I don't know. It just feels like an older ethos to video game design, even though it's modern, and it's more than just the surface level look of them. The fact that it like lets you figure it out for yourself.
Yes.
It seems to be okay if you bounce off of it, is I guess what I'm thinking. Because it's like, hey, if this isn't your jam, try one of the other 49. So yeah, I think this is a must-have in any gamer's library. If you have even a passing interest in like retro games or indie games, I think that UFO 50 has one of the best value propositions of an indie title.
Yeah, especially if you like retro games. And I mean, it says a lot. I'm not like nostalgic for this style of game, but it was still just like you said, the value proposition. You know, it's $25 and it's usually on sale, and you get so much to explore with that. I really liked playing this game with you. I want more opportunities to explore the multiplayer with you. Cool. Well, if it's okay, I want to share some honorable mentions before I say my number one.
Sure, I'll have one or two honorable mentions as well.
Oh, sure. Oh, great. Well, I have a bunch. I'll try and get through these really quickly, but 2023 was a huge year for games. 2024 for me was an even huger year, me personally. So a lot to get through. I'll just kind of go through the list here. Again, just at the edge of my top 5 that almost made it in was Animal Well. I really did enjoy that game. I really loved its design, its spooky vibes. Really great time. Similarly, Crow Country. I wouldn't try a horror game normally, but I love the developers behind this game, and they knocked it out of the park. Crow Country is this traditional horror game with these low poly models, and it's this fun puzzle box to unwrap. It's kind of cozy in a weird way, but still, scary and spooky. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Really recommended if you like that sort of thing. I finally played through all of Rayman Legends, which is from, over 10 years ago, but solid game. Could have easily made my top 5 this year had it not been for the others. Obviously, Echoes of Wisdom, really great. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, also really, really good. It's a remake. No one wanted it because it was $50, but I checked it out from the library, and it's like one of the best puzzle platformers I've ever played. Just super, super good, and you can play it in co-op. It's great. I could make a whole episode about it. It's fantastic. SteamWorld Heist 2, obviously really, really good. Apparently, I put more hours into it than any other Switch game this year. Cat Quest 3, so fun in co-op. We played that together in co-op. It's just this wonderful action RPG. You're constantly leveling up. You just get so much, there's just so much juice in it. You feel like you're always getting more powerful. It's really simple, but really fun. Loved that. Titanfall 2, incredible first-person shooter. Jusant, this artsy game about climbing a mountain, really, really cool. Plucky Squire, incredibly inventive premise. Pepper Grinder, really solid 2D game with this awesome drilling mechanic. Chants of Sonar, a wonderful detective game where you're learning different languages and translating them between themselves. It's so cool, so inventive. And then, of course, Rise of the Golden Idol. Just a wonderful experience, especially knowing that you had a hand in it. But, even if you hadn't, I loved the first game enough that I would have played this one. And it has some excellent, excellent puzzles where you really can't let the game do the work for you. You got to think to get through it. So, thank you for bearing with me. That is my huge list of honorable mentions for the year.
Jared, are you sure you had a baby this year?
I know.
Oh, wait, it was last year, technically. It was in December.
That's right. Well, and when the baby is, only a month old, or less, you have a lot of downtime where the baby is asleep and you have to kill time. So maybe that's why, maybe my year was front loaded with a lot of these. I don't know. No clue how I got through all those, but those are my favorites.
Wow. Dang.
What were your honorable mentions?
Oh, I just had 2 games I wanted to shout out. One of them was Heave Ho, which is
yeah.
a party game where you control two separate arms separately. And it makes my honorable mentions just for the sheer wacky delight of the first time we played this, with like all of us like guffawing at how stupid we all looked in the game. We were at a friend's house and we just decided to buy it, I think. Anyway, and so we played 4-player, and it's mayhem. It's really hard to like coordinate yourselves because you're controlling two arms separately, and you're playing with characters that are just two arms. Anyway, so I had a really fun time with it. And then also I played Nine Souls this year, recommended by our friend Dallin, which is a Metroidvania where you coincidentally also play as a cat. But what I think it really has going for it is the Tau Punk aesthetic is what they call it. So it's just a really interesting world that you're playing through, a combination of futuristic sci-fi and Eastern mythology, or Eastern architecture and vibes. So that made for a really cool experience.
Well, great picks. Thank you for limiting it to 2. I will do my best next year to respect our time a little more.
Yeah, whatever. You don't got to do that.
Well, my number 1, you probably already know it, is a game that reminded me why I love video games, and was not a game that I played to get through my backlog or to review on this show. It was just a game for me, and that game is Astrobot. I think it was the second or third level. I was playing it, and I turned to Mariah and I was like, I love video games. And there's nothing to me more pure, like a pure video game experience, other than a 3D platformer, you know? Like, there's something about 3D platformers that feel like video games. I think growing up, because that's what video games were when we were introduced to the video games. Mm-hmm. So, like, to me, it's like, this is a video game. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but it felt pure to me. It felt like a childhood experience, even though it didn't play to my nostalgia. I don't know any of these Sony characters that it's homaging in the game, and yet I loved it anyway. Wonderful design, technical showcase for the PS5. There's always just constantly moments where they throw a million physics objects on screen for you to play around in. Mm-hmm. And, ray tracing and all these just wonderful technical flourishes, 60 FPS, all that jazz. The company really prides itself on the tech, but they don't let that distract from also just designing a really, really fun platformer. So, yeah, I love my indie games, but like there was nothing could have beaten this game for me this year. I love Astrobot. I'm going to continue playing those games if they keep making them. I'm completely in love. It's amazing.
Awesome. Love to hear it.
Yeah. So good year. It sounds like we both had a good year for gaming, for this silly little hobby that we do in our spare time. There's some good picks this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any games you are looking forward to in the future?
Ooh, yes, but I don't have a list on me. I'm interested for the Mermaid's Tongue, or whatever it's called now.
Yes. Mermaid Mask, I think is what it's called
Detective
now.
Grimoire. Honestly, there are just as many games that are already out that I want to play as games that are not out yet that I'm excited for. So
sure.
There's a lot out there.
It's kind of hard to know what I'm excited for when there's, a new Nintendo console on the horizon.
Yeah.
Like there's probably a whole cavalcade of games that have not been announced yet that are coming next year.
Right.
That I will super look forward to. But in the meantime, I do have 2 in particular that I'm very excited for. One of them is Mina the Hollower. Been waiting quite a few years for this. Game Boy homage, Zelda action adventure. Just looks stupendous. Yacht Club Games does great work. And the other one is Split Fiction, which was just announced.
Right, yeah.
Split Fiction is the next game from the guy who made It Takes Two. And I played his first game this year as well, and it was very, very good. It Takes Two is one of my favorite co-op experiences I've ever had. So Split Fiction looks just as good, and it comes out in March, super soon. So super looking forward to that as well. But yeah, well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for sitting in front of the fire with me, Marcus.
Of course.
It's another tradition to put a Yule log on the YouTube version of this episode every year.
Ah, very nice.
It was very cozy. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a happy holiday. I guess I'll see you soon, because I'm going to spend Christmas with you.
Yes, you will. We're brothers.
That's right. Did we mention that on this show?
Yeah,
after 90-something episodes?
Maybe not recently.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone who's listened to this show. We haven't posted a lot lately. Well, I'll hopefully have an update on how often we'll post in the future very soon. But for now, please enjoy your holidays. And until then, I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
And we'll level with you next year.